In this nugget, we're going to learn how to interpret spirometry traces. A spirometer traces the four lung volumes of tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, and residual volume. A spirometer is a device which tracks the lung volumes and then produces a trace, which is what we're learning about today. As you can see, there is a man who is hooked up to the device, and as he breathes in, the line goes up. As he breathes out, the line goes down. So tidal volume is the amount of air which is exchanged in one normal breath. Basically thinking about our normal breathing. So you'll see here that the line goes up, it goes down, and the amount is relatively small here because somebody is breathing in their normal way. There's no forceful breath going on here. Whereas inspiratory reserve volume is the maximum amount of air that can be taken into the lungs above that taken in during a normal breath. So the amount of air that can be taken in above tidal volume. So as you see, there's a large line going upwards where there's a steep intake of breath, and then the line goes down to then show us our expiratory reserve volume. So this is the maximum amount of air that can be forced out of the lungs after a normal breath. So we've got our deep breaths in, which was inspiratory, our very deep breath out, which is expiratory reserve volume. So the next one we have is the residual volume. This is the amount of air left in the lungs after maximal expiration. So basically, we can't push out all of the air from our lungs. There's always a residual amount left over. Now that amount is 1.5 liters generally. So the reason for that is that we don't want the lungs sticking together. We don't want the lungs having any issues about a microscopic level. So therefore, we've always got that residual volume. Now, what we need to understand next is that there's going to be some changes during exercise. So each of the spirometry traces will alter during exercise. So I'm going to show you an exam question here that is going to show you how you need to use these. So as you can see, tidal volume remains fairly constant until exercise begins. And then as exercise begins, tidal volume increases. You'll see there that the lines get closer together, but more importantly, they get taller. That's showing that each breath in and each breath out has a larger volume. The impact that has then is that means that both inspiratory reserve volume and expiratory reserve volume both decrease. And the reason for that is that they take their figure from the top of tidal volume or the bottom of tidal volume, depending on what they are. So letter X here is the inspiratory reserve volume. As you can see, that it takes it from the top of tidal volume to the top of what is 6 liters. Through exercise, that is going to change. It means that therefore there's going to be a decrease in inspiratory and expiratory reserve volume. Whereas residual volume never ever changes. It's always 1.5 liters, as I stated before. So to summarize what we've learned, a spirometry trace shows the four lung volumes of tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, and residual volume. Tidal volume is essentially how much breath we breathe in and out in a normal breath. During exercise, tidal volume increases because when we start to exercise, the amount of air that we take in and out increases. The effect that has is that inspiratory reserve volume decreases, expiratory reserve volume also decreases, and then residual volume stays the same because it never ever changes. It remains constant.